Welcome back to the $1 million Tipping Point podcast. Today, we've got Julie B on the show, which is super exciting. I wanted to tell everyone, all my new listeners, I've got this business right now that is awesome. And I know for a while, this podcast has kind of been like a single passion thing, but now it has expanded into my business. And we are brought to you basically by Corporate to Contract number 2. And it's the place to go if you have corporate or office experience and want to control your own life and schedule by taking the skills you have and becoming your own boss and online business owner. I will guide you through that, Kiri Mohan, through some group coaching and courses. And so if you're interested, please go to corporate2contract.com. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter where you get exclusive content every Thursday straight from your inbox from guests like Julie B. All right, Julie, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kiri. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
I am too. Julie B is an award-winning entrepreneur, a leader of leaders, and engaging storyteller. Julie has spoken for 14 plus years on topics including leadership, management, employee engagement and morale, workplace culture, business ownership, and entrepreneurship. Julie's leadership insights have been featured on Fast Company, Forbes, Thrive Global, and many more. Her forthcoming book with Matt Holt Books, The Business Owner's Guide to Burnout, is scheduled to hit bookshelves in early 2024. So welcome again. And I'm really excited that you're on the show because you have such a wide range of experience. I think is going to be very helpful for our audience who are also trying to grow their business to 7 figures.
I'm excited to be here and talk about my parallel entrepreneurship for sure.
All right, so let's talk about your business. Tell us, what do you do right now and what have you done? And just go into that for us, please.
Yeah, I will try to keep this as succinct as I can. So these days I am helping business owners prevent burnout, save time, and make money. And I primarily do that through my podcasts and coaching. One thing that's kind of unique about what I'm doing is I tend to coach the teams or the key employees more than the business owner, because what I have learned is the way that I can best help business owners reach those next levels, whatever their achievement marks are, their milestones, is by making sure that their team is helping them reach them. And so a lot of the times the business owners get a little too close to the team, and sometimes they need almost like a buffer. And I've just got a knack for going into those environments and really helping the team come along, which ultimately helps the business owner get to where they need to be without burning out, which is something that I'm very passionate about, helping business owners prevent burnout, because I think that it's one of the things that kind of stops people in their tracks and really can hinder momentum. And I think, to be successful and to survive and then thrive, you have to be able to keep going, keep that momentum going. Thereby, that's why it's important to prevent burnout. So that's kind of what I'm doing these days.
Is your passion for burnout because is that something you experienced and so you want to help others?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through 3 pretty significant burnouts as a business owner. One almost ended my marriage. One, thankfully, it didn't. One put me into the hospital with emergency surgery, and I was out of work for 6 weeks. And the last one, I thought I was having a heart attack and was having a panic attack and had to take 2 weeks off of work abruptly, and then just really had to reconfigure everything that I was doing. And each one of those steps, while I am thankful for burnout, because I think it teaches you, it makes you prioritize, it teaches you, there are so many lessons you can learn from it. Each one of those steps, it really halted our progress. And I want to help business owners not have to go through that. And if they have gone through that, then they can learn the lessons that they need to learn to prevent future burnout. So there's a saying in the writers community, authors community, is you're basically writing a book for your past self. And that's basically what I did, because there really isn't a lot of resources out there that have a system for helping business owners work through burnout. Telling a business owner to take a vacation when they're burned out is some of the worst advice I think you can give a business owner specifically. Good advice to do that maybe after you fix the problem that's causing burnout, but in the minute, that can actually make burnout worse for the business owner when they think, oh my gosh, I have to take a break, but I can't. That can be a real challenge. So that, it's all kind of culminates into my really big mission, which is to help 1 million business owners by 2032. And, I can help them in a variety of ways, given my background in marketing and as a CPA and all of the things I've done in the past. but it's all culminating into this vision of 1 million business owners by 2032.
That is a big goal.
It is. Yes.
I hope you get there. That's incredible. So, I was just thinking when you're saying take a vacation, it's so hard nowadays too, because a lot of people don't know how to completely unplug either. Mm-hmm. So it's like you say, go take a vacation, and people have these, they have these goals of unplugging, or I will only check email between these hours. But I find that people rarely do that. So they're not really enjoying that just time to rejuvenate and get creative and like refill whatever they need to refill within themselves. So it's a hard thing, because I've heard that too, like just take the time off, but a lot of people feel like they can't unplug.
It's always take the time off and set better boundaries, which is great. And how do you, as a business owner, especially, high achieving, high performing business owners, how do you do that? And one thing that's really interesting that I've talked to so many business owners about burnout at this point is often burnout comes from really amazing things. Like I raised $88 million in seed funding for a venture firm, or for my technology, my new SaaS product, or we just had this huge merger and acquisition, and now I cannot get out of bed in the morning. So what is very fascinating to me with business owners is burnout often comes after some type of massive success. I mean, even I've talked to business owners who have sold their companies, weren't even working in their companies, and that's when they had burnout. Because they were starting another business, but they didn't have to worry about finances at all. And yet they were burned out because of everything they had to do leading up to getting that business sold. So it's very fascinating. We often think that burnout comes from the hard things, the negative things, which it does as well. But what I'm learning from a lot of high performers and high achievers is that it often comes after some kind of massive success.
Mm-hmm. And I feel that it's almost similar to what's it called? Like the aftershock of a earthquake, right? Like the earthquake is leading up to that major source of success. And then it's just like, you have these ripples. And I even had this acupuncturist once say to me, which was really interesting, that stress has a really long tail. And she like kind of put it like that. So it's like, if you're watching this on YouTube, like the peak, you sold this company, you got acquired, or whatever it is. And then it might just be this after tail that goes on for a really, really long time. And that's kind of sounds like to me what you're explaining with the burnout.
And oftentimes business owners will ask me, how do I even know if I'm in burnout? Like a lot of them don't even know that they're in burnout.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but are there different ways that you've noticed this? Like, because I think most of us associate burnout with like that, oh my God, I can't get up in the morning and I don't have motivation, and everything just crashes. It's like this very momentous occasion.
And that's typically, so I usually see it go from attentional to emotional to physical. So what you're talking about is usually our first burnout. That's what it is you can't get out of bed in the morning, or you have zero energy. There's not enough sleep in the world. You could sleep for 48 hours straight and still be exhausted and still not be able to get out of bed in the morning. So usually where it starts though is attentional. And that's things like you can't get things done. You can't form a cohesive sentence. Maybe you've lost sight of the mission and vision, and you can't really articulate. You can't lead with message to your team. That's usually a very early indicator of burnout for business owners, and that just comes from having too much in your brain. That's where that starts. And then from there, it will usually go into an emotional burnout, which is oftentimes it's, you're a little bit more irritable than you usually are, or maybe you're sharp with people, but it's also, you just kind of check out of things. You say, I don't care a lot to things you used to care about. I always tell a business owner, if they're saying, I don't care, it's something to really pay attention to, because even if it's, I don't care about how you get something done, you may have hit an emotional burnout point, because you never want to tell your people you don't care about how they're doing something. You can say, I trust you to go and do it. I believe in you. Go do the thing. Let me know if you have questions. But if you're saying, I don't care, that's one of the big indicators for me for emotional burnout. And then we get into the physical stuff, like sleep, getting sick more, aches and pains, having to have surgery, like all of these things that just kind of show up. But usually that's like the third stop on the burnout train.
Ooh, so it's like once you get there, it's actually way worse than you may think it is.
Yeah, because usually there's stuff that's usually there are things that are leading up to that you have not maybe paid attention to in the past, or you don't even recognize. Like for me, I know that I'm getting into emotional burnout if I say things like, I just have to fill in the blank, get through this quarter, get through this week, get through this pitch, whatever. Or if I have to start qualifying, like when I'm at a networking event, if people ask me how I'm doing and I have to start saying I'm good, busy, if I have to start qualifying like what I'm doing with positive words, it's good, everything's good, I'm really, really busy. That's a red flag for me. So it's kind of just helping. We often have a lot of those red flags in our everyday language that we don't even realize. And if it's not a burnout indicator, then I, try to work with the business owners to change their language to be a little bit more positive, because, I'm good, busy is, being busy doesn't mean you're really being effective in your role. And you may need to change your language there a little bit. So that's just a little bit of an insight in terms of how I help business owners try to prevent it from getting all the way to, I can't get out of bed in the morning.
And what's interesting to me, but I mean, how do you then get clients? Because most of the time I feel like people, it almost reminds me when you're talking about it, like when people are going through a divorce and they say you should have marriage counseling constantly, right? Before the bad stuff hits the fan. And yet people only go when they're like on the brink of divorce, right? So it's like, how do you get clients and convince them, no, you really should work with me, when they probably might not realize they're even at step 2 yet, right?
Yeah. But Carrie, here's the thing. I don't usually, it's funny, I don't work with a lot of business owners. Business owners do not raise their hand and say, I'm burned out.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there is a inherent feeling of failure in that, or guilt, or well, I brought this on myself, so I've got to figure it out. I usually find out a business owner is burnt out by working with their teams or by coaching them. A lot of business owners will bring me in to either work with their teams towards a specific goal, like launching an internship program, or getting a branded podcast off the ground. And it's funny because I'm very good at accountability. I've got some things that I do with coaching that makes the work actually get done. But through that, I end up finding out if a business owner is burnt out or not. And then honestly, they often, they don't want coaching around it. So that's why I actually wrote a book. And along with that book is going to be a course that you can get online. And it's a very private thing. And I think it kind of worked out that I think the book is going to really help business owners, because I mean, I've actually tried to launch classes and courses and things on burnout, complete failure. And I finally realized that no business owner wants to raise their hand and admit they're burned out. So I'm trying to help those individuals through kind of, I don't want to say back channels, but that's what it is. Like, you've got to self-select in, and I'm making it so you can self-select in privately. Nobody has to know. You read my book, you go online, you do the online course. And then if you want some more help from burnout, or, wherever you are leveraging your burnout, making the most out of what you've learned, making the most out of the space that you had to make to deal with it, that's when I can usually come in and really help a business owner. And that's when they're usually ready to say, okay, I've done like step 1 through 4. I'm now ready for you to come in and help me like make the most out of what I just went through.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. That makes a lot more sense.
So I've got a lot going on. I've got a podcast. I sell sponsorships there. I have a marketing agency as well. So, I've got a couple of businesses that kind of get me to the, with the title of your podcast. We've got multiple sources of revenue that get me there, but this is going to be the thing that I probably do the rest of my career, is help business owners. And it is with burnout. It's also just helping them thrive. That's really what I want to do because of the impact they can make on their communities. We employ almost half the workforce in America, and almost half of us are always burned out. So based on some of the studies that have come out, so I really want to help. I just saw that tie between, I can help business owners with burnout and they can continue to employ half of America, basically, then the impact on the local community will be great. And so that's kind of where this all comes together.
Yeah. I think it's a very important aspect. I think I don't want to say like if you're a business owner at some point you're going to hit burnout, because some people don't. But I think there's always like, I know there's definitely been times where I've been very, very close. And like you said, I reached that like physical part where I once had a client when I was a VA who like I just had to be always on, basically. And the phone was always going off and she needed me to respond within 3 hours. And I thought by charging her a lot of money, I would be okay with that. But I didn't. And like, that was something that lasted for a long time. And I totally burned out after her. And I like wanted to quit my whole business, like go do something else. But thankfully, like, I recovered. But I think it's so important just because as a business owner, a lot of the time, like you're in charge of, a lot. And it's sometimes, even if you're a solopreneur and it's just you and you're doing everything, that's, I think, a risk as well. And it's just important. So I'm glad you're like telling us about this and you're making it your mission. And hopefully you do help 1 million people and prevent some burnout, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the goal. We are at, as of March 30, we've been tracking for about 6 months. And thus far we're at 42,000 people.
Wow. Good for you.
So we're tracking. When I first set that goal, I was like, oh man, this is a big, hairy, audacious goal. But we're 6 months into tracking it and we're at 42,000 people. So that's super amazing. Excited about it. I think we're going to hit that goal and really help a lot of business owners.
That's amazing. So you said you have a few things going on and eventually you're going to shift to just this. Yeah. If you can just briefly tell us about the other things, and then we can talk about maybe like your team and how you manage all of that.
Yeah. So I started my entrepreneurial journey in marketing. I started a social media marketing agency, Be Smart Social Media, and that's been around it'll be 15 years this September. So we're almost at the 15-year mark there. I spend about 5 hours a month in that business now. So I've got a team there that pretty much runs everything. I come in for leadership and strategic development, basically. Sometimes sales a little bit, just depending on what's going on. And then I have my coaching, consulting, speaking agency, and I would say the book falls under that. And then in addition to that, I've got what I'm calling the TJB Media company, basically. I've got a podcast and 2 YouTube shows where I'm basically building out a media empire. So right now I'm selling sponsorships on those shows as well. So it's kind of like those 3 funnels that I have going on. They all tie together in one way, shape, or form, but those are the 3 really important silos I think that we have going on.
And so what does your team look like with each business? Yeah.
So over at Be Smart, and it's interesting, I was listening to some of your past episodes about like employer versus contractor. And I used to be like 100% team employer for most stuff, team employee. And I've recently, over the past like year and a half, I really shifted from that because marketing and the marketing agency, I'll say right now I've got 1 employee across all of these entities, and the rest is contractors, staffers. So in the marketing agency, I've got 4 contractors working over there, 2 that are full-time, 2 that are part-time, and they do a fantastic, I mean, they're just awesome. They just do an amazing job. And I like that there because marketing I needed the ability to scale up and down. And I think I made a lot of mistakes in hiring there in that agency. So I've taken the mistakes that I've learned from like hiring employees and the ability to scale up and down in an industry into these other channels. And then, I would say the media umbrella, I've got 5 contractors working for me under the media, and I'm really the only full-time employee under all of the media umbrella stuff, which would be the consulting, the coaching, as well as the podcasting and the YouTube series.
Can you share with us a little bit about the mistakes that you learned from hiring and how that helped you scale? And not make mistakes again?
Yeah. I think so. A couple of things. One, probably the biggest mistake that I made in hiring was thinking that if I hired for a certain type of role, I'll just say sales. Sales was something that I really wanted to get off my plate. Hiring and onboarding it takes so much energy and effort. And once I got those individuals onboarded, I thought, okay, like I can just check in with them on the weekly staff meeting, monthly, and what I learned is how much energy it actually requires from usually at that level, the business owner, to coach and lead and manage, which are two totally different things. And the managing part is probably like not my best skill set. So the biggest thing I learned is that I've got to have a project manager or a business manager whose job it literally is to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest takeaways. The other thing I would say is don't hire just to fix a problem. That is probably the other biggest thing. The problem could be everything from I don't want to do it anymore to we don't know what we're doing here and we need help. I think that in some regards, when you do delegate, obviously you want to get the things off your plate that you don't love doing, but you cannot just go out. And I always say, like, if you're not willing to do it, don't expect somebody else to do it. Don't like give somebody work that you wouldn't at least be willing to do if you had to. So I think those are the two biggest things that I've learned from hiring is just, don't just hire to fix a problem. As a leader, as a business owner, you got to know what the problem is. You got to get your arms around it with your existing team before you bring in somebody else. I think that's so important. And so, in learning that with Be Smart Social Media, I've brought that over into some of the things I've brought over into the other companies is if you have your process and system set up correctly, you can really, you can hire a lot of people in a lot of different ways. You get a lot more flexibility. So I think it starts with, you got to make sure you've got your systems and your processes set up. That's crucial. And that, or at least your business manager or your project manager knows how all that works together and can explain it to you. Like, there comes a point where you just can't do it all, obviously. But you always need to at least have your arms around what's going on, and then breaking it down into as small a task as possible in a project management software. That has really enabled me to really effectively outsource and, get our net profit margins into like the 40-50% range, even with like a staff heavy, everything here is staff, basically staff or marketing and advertising. That's where we spend pretty much any money we invest in the business is either going to be in people or in marketing, advertising. So those lessons that I learned really set me up to hit like a 40 or 50% profit margin kind of all the way around the board. But I learned a lot of things the hard way. I'll say that much.
I think people get very lazy around systems and processes. I don't want to generalize and speak for everyone, but it's a common theme when I'm interviewing women is like, get your systems and automations and processes set up because it will save you so much time in the long run. And there was a woman, I think her name was Lisa Williams. I think she aired 2022 in the fall. She had such like a robust, she didn't have like even like a platform, but she just had simple Google Docs with like systems and processes, but she would update on like make a video of it every single time that she changed it. And she said it was amazing the difference the video made versus just having like steps laid out, because she had both for the visual and like the analytical thinker, but she's like, the video was just so key because she's like, I had a VA quit on me randomly and I had to hire someone new. And like just having that video there, it just made it so much more seamless. And I thought that was interesting because she didn't even have like these robust systems and like crazy CRM stuff or anything like that. It was just very much like, I just create these videos and things. I've noticed such an increase in my time, my revenue, and just being able to like seamlessly move from one person to another. and manage them better.
And I do that as well. And one place that I actually add videos is when I'm giving someone feedback. So if I have for example, a new social media coordinator on the staff, and they create a post that isn't quite in the right voice, or, maybe they use a word that I wouldn't use. It depends on which company we're working under, but sometimes I will see it and I will make a video about it. And I'll say, usually I would say something like this instead of that. And I would use this hashtag instead of that hashtag. So what I'm doing is, I'm giving them the feedback that they need going forward. But then if anybody else comes along, that video is made in terms of, not only do you have the video that says, here's how you do this in our system, you have here's the 5 videos Julie has made about voice and brand. You should also watch. So it just helps us all get up to speed, a lot faster. And I don't have to worry as much about, the next person that comes in. It's a constant evolution. You start with nothing, you build your first, list of to-dos and a handful of videos. And then you bring somebody in and you're like, okay, let's capture all of that content as well and put that into the system. And, it's business owner evolution and the evolution of how you run your company. It's a never ending innovative process. I think, there's a point where you have to make decisions, you have to stop planning, you have to move forward. But I also think it's important that people understand that there is this constant evolution of how you do things today is going to be different than how you're going to do them 5 years from now, or even a year from now, depending on where you are in your business. And just, being open to that and, being able to go with, the new technologies and innovations that are out there. I don't want to go down an AI rabbit hole, but ChatGPT is changing the game. ChatGPT is going to make it so that I think anybody can scale their business. I think there's a real unique opportunity for business owners who it's probably one of the best times, I think, to be kind of a content creator or in this coach economy, because I think Google and eventually all individuals our target audience will reward content that wasn't created by ChatGPT or whatever the AI tool at the time is. So I don't know, you've got to be aware of that, but you also have to know how it plays in your business, and then also know how that can help you evolve and how to use it in your own innovation.
I've been using it for my content creation, but not copying, pasting, obviously, but taking it and saying, oh, good. Now I don't have to think as hard and create so much, but then I can go in there and make it more strategic and more reflective of my voice. And it's been so helpful. So helpful.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about, leadership versus management and how they're very different. Can you give us, you went into management a little bit, how you have a business manager, your team, et cetera. Give us, please, a little bit more about leadership and how you think that has changed for you, especially as you've grown from smaller business owner to 7-figure business owner.
So the one thing I would say is my mantra there is you lead your people, you manage the work. And it's very important to separate those two when you're talking about leadership and management, because they are two completely different skill sets. From a leadership perspective, as I've grown, I coach. I'm more of a coach than a captain. Basically, I ask questions. With my team, it's very much so, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I don't answer their questions a lot of the times. Usually if they ask me a question that I know they can answer, my answer back to them is going to be, well, what do you think we should do? Because if I know they can answer it, I want them to answer it. One of the biggest things that I think I've learned in my 15 years is from a culture perspective. And we all know culture is important in business. But I think that a lot of small businesses have and pride themselves on having a family culture, where everybody feels like family, and you know a lot about the person's life and all of that. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, except that it's hard to fire family. So when you get into position, and this is sometimes what I do with business owners, is they've gotten too close to their key people, and so that's why there's a performance problem. But I am now more focused on having a team culture. When you show up for practice, you earn your spot on, every day. Like if you played any sports as a kid, or if you've done anything competitively, done anything on a team, it doesn't even have to be sports. You earned your spot, through the work that you did, through the practice, and you were constantly developing. Your teammates were also very invested in you, because like if you were winning, they were winning. So, I think that I've made this transition in how I think about culture, because I used to very much so be like, it's like a family around here, to now like we're a team. And, you've got some days your team members are going to have bad days, and the team is there to pull that person up. It's not, it's my cousin who's having a bad day over here. It's my point guard, or my quarterback, or my offensive lineman, or whoever it is, or the key person on the debate team is having a bad day. So how can I help them? How can I go into work and help them? And that change has really helped me have a stronger, I don't want to say we're not really like competitive internally, but it's that strive for improvement. It's that strive to be better, to make yourself better, and to also help your other teammates be better as well.
I like that. Yeah. Let's shift a little bit here to how you grew your business from 6 figures to 7. Yeah. Do you have any steps that you could lay out that come to mind that really helped you grow your business from 6 figures to 7?
Yeah. So the first thing is make sure everybody on the team knows what is like, what's going on, why we're doing what we're doing, and what their role is in that growth. So if you're making widgets, the person who's making the widgets needs to understand that if they're late, what that does to, the big picture of what everybody's trying to work for. If if a social media post goes out late or has a spelling error in it, this is what that means. So I think that making sure that everybody not only knows what you're going for, but what, when they do a good job, and when they do a good job, what that means to the goal. And when, they have a mistake, what that means to the goal. So I think that's the first thing, because you can't get there without your team. It's really hard to get there without your team if you're not all on the same page. So from there, the next thing is action. I mean, it's cliche, but I think your minimum viable product, to take it to market and charge what you think, you need to charge for it, get the feedback. Sometimes I used to even give some things away for free initially to existing clients to test it, and to get the feedback, get testimonials, all of that. So get whatever it is you're selling to market as soon as you possibly can, with obviously legally and all of that, depending on what you're doing, but as soon as you can get it to market. And then it's a matter of having, the KPIs that you need to hit, your leading indicators, not your revenue's a lagging indicator. So if you're just talking about revenue, that's something that has already happened. You need to look at like know what the leading indicators are. So it might be number of leads that come into your website, or number of quotes or proposals, or, there's a ton of different leading indicators that lead up to revenue. Know what those are. And then that's what you focus on from a management perspective. You make sure that those leading indicators are being met or exceeding expectation. And then honestly, if you do that, I've found that the money tends to follow, because if you know what your leading indicators are for revenue, then as long as you're making those, doing the input that make those leading indicators happen, you can get there. So, there's a lot of steps in between there. Obviously you got to, hire right. If you've got somebody who's on your team who's not the right fit, you got to let them go. And that sucks, but it's part of it's part of growing. You learn that as you go as well. Having the right people, having, the right accounting person or the right lawyer on your team sometimes is really crucial. So but it really, honestly, it comes down to action. It makes sure everybody's rowing in the right direction, taking that first product, whatever it is, getting it to market as soon as you can, and then really focusing more on the leading indicators than sales revenue. Because build it backwards from, if sales revenue is what you're going for, then, you need a certain number of sales, and then, you need a certain number of inputs to make that happen. So what you're really wanting to focus on is getting those inputs done every day.
Mm-hmm. Did you always want to hit 7 figures, or was it something that just kind of happened organically? And did you have to change your mindset at all around growing your business to this level?
I've always wanted to hit multiple 7 figures in multiple businesses. So
I love the honesty. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an ambitious person. I'm a pretty humble person and like I will own my mistakes. I own my mistakes regularly to my team when I do make them. I think I grew up in West Virginia, and we were poor, but I never felt like we were poor. I think my parents did a really good job at like making us feel like we weren't poor. But I remember my dad would leave and go to Pennsylvania for work because all the factory jobs had dried up in West Virginia, and he would actually be in Pennsylvania for most of the week, and he would come home on the weekends. I remember him leaving my mom like $10 for a whole week with 3 kids in the house, for gas, for food, for everything. Like I remember that. And my mom, we had a family community around, but I grew up in a very like, the system is against us. And there was a lot of just, we're never going to get out of this kind of financial hole mentality, I think, and where I grew up. And so, yeah, I had to do a lot of work around mindset to, number one, even think it was possible. And number two, to realize it was okay. Because I also grew up with, the thinking of, oh, those rich people.
They're bad.
Those
They're
rich
bad.
people.
Yeah.
And Kiri, I don't have one particular moment when that happened. I think that it's just happened over time. I think one thing that I've done is I've surrounded myself with in a community of other women business owners who have, might have a little bit of a similar story where they grew up poor, they were on food stamps. Like I remember eating government cheese, looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, we ate government cheese. But at the time, my parents I never felt poor when I was a kid. So I had to number one, like understand that, yes, I could do this. And I didn't have to do it the way that everybody thought you had to do it, which was go to college, get a job, work for 45 years and then, retire and hope you live long enough to enjoy the 401k you spent all that time building up. I didn't have to do it that way. So there was some mindset work around that. But then I think the harder one was accepting that it was okay to make money. I think that's probably been the harder mindset for me, and to understand that you can use money for good and you can use money for evil, or you could use, there's a light side and a dark side to it. And it's really all about how because I grew up in a very, people use a mentality of people were using money for not so good things. And that's kind of what I saw and what I heard. And so I've had to really teach myself, okay, well, here's how you use money for good. You invest in, that program, or you sponsor that, you sponsor that thing that business owner really needs you to sponsor to keep them going. There's a lot of different ways that, we can utilize money. And I think once I made that mindset shift of I'm going to use it for good, that's when things really started turning around for me, because I was, having the 5-figure months, which lead to, 6-figure or the 5-figure months, which will eventually lead to your, 7-figure years. And I was feeling guilty. I felt like I was greedy, but I wasn't, I had to do a lot of work around like having money in your bank account does not make you a greedy person. It's what you do with it that matters.
Now, you don't have to answer this, but I'm curious, and it could be too personal. And if it is, we'll cut it out. If you're still in touch with your family, how do they view you now as a business owner and as someone who wants to make multiple 7 figures?
Yeah. I am still in touch with I love my mom and my dad. I'm fortunate they're still living, and I've actually dedicated my first book to them, which was a really cool thing to be able to do, but they don't understand what I do.
Okay.
So, they're always asking me. So for example, when I tell them I have a busy week of creating podcasts, their first response is, how much are you making from that? And, sometimes I'm not like that one podcast, nothing. Like, I'm not, I mean, it'll eventually come around probably some way, shape, or form, but like, I'm not getting paid to go on that one show. And they just don't get it. And I've just had to accept that my family will not understand. They're just not going to understand my trajectory, because everybody else in my family is work 40 years and retire and hope you have enough in your 401k to live on for the rest of your life. Like my brother, my sister, and my mom and dad, that was their whole life. And I'm the the baby of the family, and just kind of the crazy. I'm also the like wild one. So I think that there's a little bit of that thrown in. And my mom will literally tell her friends, I don't understand what Julie does, but she seems happy, so I'm happy for her. So it's more, I don't really talk about money with them a lot anymore, because I've just accepted they're never going to, like, if I'm not making a certain salary, they're not going to see me as successful. And I don't need that in my life. So I just talk about the fun things that I'm doing and leave out the money stuff with them, because, at the end of the day, it's easier for me. It's a boundary for me. It's one of the things that I think helps me actually prevent burnout, is not having that weight of proving my worth to my family anymore in terms of finances, even though I have hit these I have hit these milestones. But it's just, there's a lot of other stuff behind it that they're like, well, then why don't you just do that 2-week vacation to Disney World? And I'm like, because I'm investing that money in something else over here in my business that will help me grow, that will have an ROI. Like, go to Disney World, so it's a complicated, I don't shy away from it, but it's just gotten to be one of those things where I just don't really talk with my family much about money, because I don't know, they just don't understand the entrepreneurial side of it. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you answered that, because I was thinking that to myself. I was like, how she came from that kind of culture, like a food stamp culture, and like having this more poor or poverty mentality, which is what they talk about. I think I when you're talking about, your mindset work, I know I've read these books and articles about like, the poverty mentality versus, and you don't have to come from poverty to have this mentality at all, even though you I guess have, but it's more this growth mentality versus the poverty mentality, which is holding you back. And like a lot of stuff with the poverty mentality is also like you were talking about the man, and like, there's always an excuse. There's someone out there that's holding you back, that can't make you reach your full potential, instead of realizing like you have the ability to do it yourself.
It's not allowing yourself to have the victim mentality.
That's it. The victim mentality. Thank you for
that is the thing. It's really easy. And everybody has things happen to them. I think a lot of people, I won't say everybody, a lot of people have things happen to them throughout their lives that would really make it easy for them to be in a victim mentality. And I get into that mentality every once in a while about certain things. When certain things happen, like a client cancels, I don't get that brand deal, like whatever it is, but I only give myself a little bit of time to be, oh, woe is me. Like, I give myself the time, because I feel like you have to if you're having those feelings, I feel like you have to process through that to be able to make the mind shift. So, that to make the mindset shift, you have to be able to say, okay, let me have my feelings for, 24, 48 hours, whatever it is. But then I get into this, like, I literally talk to myself, and I'll say things like, come on, like, Julie B, you got to just, you got this, like, just suck it up. Like, we're going to get through it. This sucks right now, but it's, you're going to keep going, and you're going to hit that goal. You're going to help those 1 million business owners. You're going to be that New York Times bestselling author. Like, all of these goals that I have, you're going to hit that, multiple 7 figures and multiple businesses. You're going to do that. So, eventually I think that there's a point where you do have to shift out of that victim mentality. And you've got to get back into that, I don't even know, that determined, that grit, that mentality that business owners have. That's just how I do it. It may not work for everybody, but that's what happens with me.
I'm very similar. I let myself sulk for 24, 48 hours. I mean, but you talk to yourself a little bit kinder. I think what I'm more like, well, I'll show them. I'll
Oh
get even
no.
bigger. Oh yeah, just watch me. Okay, you don't want to work with me? Fine.
Oh yeah, no, that comes out. I'm like, oh, you don't want to be on my podcast right now? Okay, cool. We'll see what you think 3 years from now. Try like that's no, like that. And that comes from just the competitive. I played
Yeah.
sports in high school, and I that comes from just the, I think also being the baby of the family. Like, well, I'm going to show you, like, let me show you how this is actually done. There's a, entrepreneurs, when a lot of us have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, that we have something to prove, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, I think you can't just let it always be about like that chip on your shoulder, but sometimes you need that to pull yourself out of the victim mentality. And sometimes it's super motivating. I mean, part of what makes us high achievers is the losing, the failures. I mean, the winning is in the failing, because the failing and the losing is what makes you so freaking motivated to go to the next step. And, once you get over that, oh man, it sucks that I lost that thing, it just makes you more motivated on the other side of it.
It really does. Absolutely true. So have you thought about selling your businesses or any kind of exit plans in the future? Or are you still just running it for as long as possible?
Yeah, so I definitely want to sell Be Smart social media. I did a ton of work last year on it, and I feel like it's set up to be sold. Marketing agencies are it's just an interesting it's an interesting business to sell, because really what you're selling is your client list and your existing systems and processes, and then you've got like personalities with the team and all of that you got to work out. I did a lot of work on it last year and eliminated a whole lot of options. I actually, there's still probably, I would say, like 3 options on the table that I'm looking at in terms of the actual strategy that I'm going to take. I started last year with probably, I don't know, like 12 options of how I could potentially exit Be Smart. And so now I'm down to like 3. And I got to a point with it where I just thought, I just need to, I'm going to let it just settle for a minute. Sometimes you work really hard on something, do a lot of research on something, you think about something a lot, you need to just kind of let it settle for a minute.
I've been through that. Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of decided this year, I was just going to let that settle and see what comes to me, see if anything shows up organically. But yeah, definitely I want to sell that company. That's for sure. This other stuff that I'm doing, I don't know, it's new. So it's hard to sell yourself as a brand. So I figure like the consulting and coaching I'll probably keep, but yeah, I mean, I can certainly see me having multiple businesses. I ultimately want to be able to be like an angel investor or get into private equity and that type of thing. Like that in the next 10 years is something I would love to be able to do. So in that game, then yeah, I'll certainly be buying and selling businesses, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with all of that.
Oh, good. So what advice do you have for other women as they grow their business and if they want to be like you and hit 7 figures or multiple 7 figures?
Yeah, I think probably just do it. Just stop planning and start doing. I think that's the advice from everything I've seen. I've spent so much time planning and wasting time planning and planning and planning and planning. So you get to a point where if you're me selling a business is a good example. So I started with 12 options. I'm down to 3. I'm still planning all of that, but I know when planning becomes procrastinating is when I start adding more things to the table. So if I was telling you now, like, well, I had 12 options and now I have 20, I would say I was procrastinating. But the fact that I'm removing options means that I'm moving forward in my brain. So you've got to just go for it. I think that's really the big thing. And then that when you hire, I think do not think of yourself as a family. I do not think of the people who work for you as a family, because that just sets you up. It might sound great at the beginning, but that just sets you up for like hard conversations down the line. So I think, if you can, when you are hiring, whether it's contractors, employees, whatever it is, you want to think of them as teammates more than, family. I think that those are the 2 things that if I had to do it all over again, those are the 2 things that I would change.
So this is your moment. Where can we find you? What's your webpage, your book? please tell us more about that if you have anything you want to offer our audience as well.
Yeah. So best place to find me is on my website is thejulieb.com. My last name is spelled like a bumblebee, BEE. And pretty much all of my handles on social are the Julie B as well. Follow me. And the other thing I would say is sign up for my Be Awesome brief. You can sign up for that on my website. That's all over my website. It's an email I send out once a week. Big actions, easy ideas that help you elevate your business. And then I also highlight some other business owners that are doing awesome things in the community. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me.
Thank you so much. So what is one philosophy, mantra, or quote that you try to run your business by?
Swing for the fences.
Love it. Love it.
Go for it. Just swing, take the big swings. You're going to strike out sometimes, but man, when you make contact and you hit a home run, that's how I got my book deal. So that's been my mantra, is swing for the fences.
Thank you. Okay. So thank you again for joining us on this interview, Julie. And for our audience, if you're listening to the show, if you found it informative and valuable and you like what Julie said, please do one little favor and share it with someone who you think would benefit from her advice. And even if you have to open that podcast app on their phone, they'll thank you for it. So again, until next time, you can find me on LinkedIn or tag me on Instagram @virtuallycarrie. So thank you again, Julie.
Thank you, Carrie.